The 1990s was a wild decade. 3D games, online games, Biggie Smalls, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and of course, global warming. Global warming, or climate change as we know it today, has always been around, but it ramped up and flooded the public consciousness in the 90s. Nintendo saw this and said, what if we gamified global warming? And bam! Konae-chan's Dokidoki Penguin Kazoku was created. That's one of the coolest and most tragic title sequences I have ever seen. Konae-chan was released in 1995 for the Satellaview, a Japanese exclusive add-on to the Super Famicom, which would broadcast original games for certain hours of the week. It was recently recovered and dumped by Forest of Illusion. Shout out to them. The objective of the game is to safely escort little penguins across the melting glaciers before the time runs out. And while you're doing that, you're also picking up some fish and coins, because when you're saving animals, you've also got to get that high score, baby! Even if a few penguin drown from it. It's worth it for that high score. Oops! The game is essentially Frogger, except climate change. At least in Frogger you can go backwards. In this game, as soon as you make that jump, you can't go back. It's kind of frustrating. There are 5 levels in total, and overall it's a fairly easy game. It's not too hard. At least not until the wind picks up. From stage 3 onward, there's a blizzard happening while hop-skipping glaciers. Climate change, am I right? This is a difficulty spike, but not too big of a spike. And besides, if the player does happen to fall off and drown a terrible death, they at least have 2 more tries because every run begins with 3 lives. Look at her, smiling and waving despite letting several penguins drown. The blizzard and the drowning aren't the only hazards. Birds. 3 variations of birds can swoop down and just snatch penguins away. Are birds even natural predators of penguins? I have never actually seen a penguin get taken away by a bird. I mean, how could that even happen at a zoo? You know, the only place I've actually personally seen a penguin. Turns out birds snatch baby penguins away. So these are babies. We're drowning baby penguins. If the player successfully makes it through the 5 stages of climate change and bird snatching, they're rewarded with a beautiful ending where Konae-chan successfully reunites the penguins with their parents. It's really touching, and everyone is together and happy and celebrating and crying happy tears. It's great to see them together. And they'll be together, you know, at least until the next inevitable climate change disaster strikes and breaks up this colony of penguins. Also, we get a postcard! It's so neat! I don't know what it says. If the player fails to make it through the levels, then Konae-chan drowns and we never hear from her again. Overall, this game is very straightforward, but who is behind this little title? Softnica. What the f*** is a Softnica, who now go by Softnica, was besties with Nintendo in the late 80s and 90s. They created a variety of games that Nintendo published, while also assisting on a bunch of heavy hitters for Nintendo's library, such as the bodacious Wave Race for the Game Boy, the absolutely wonderful Pokemon Snap, and every Nintendo fan's favorite RPG that they never played, Earthbound. As for their original titles, Softnica was so buddy-buddy with Nintendo that they were allowed to make Donkey Kong 1994, one of the greatest Game Boy games and Donkey Kong games to date. Oh, fantastic game. They also made Mole Mania, which is pretty fun, and Shin Onigashima, which is most well known to the West as the Japanese game with that killer remix from Smash. Softnica actually had a quiet and probably tragic breakup with Nintendo in the early 2000s, and now they only assist in miscellaneous gaming projects like this train game. But they also teach programming in Asian countries, which is pretty cool. Well, At least they used to. I mean, if you go to their website, there's nothing there. It just ominously says 2020 with a message that Google translates to preparing to restart. Good luck on that endeavor, Softnica. Many of us had some very colorful ventures that started in 2020. So Softnica released this climate change simulation for Satellaview during its release year, 1995. Nobody asked me, but if I were a localizer for this game, I would suggest naming it Konae-chan, the loving penguin family, but I don't know a lick of Japanese, so maybe I shouldn't even put my white American opinion in here, but I did anyway. There is so little information on this game out there. When Softnica actually had a website, on their works page, they didn't even list this game by its title. According to trusty Google Translate, they listed mini games for satellite broadcasting, which I assume includes our family-friendly Drowning Penguin game.
Poggers!
Either way, Softnica did a good job with this game. I enjoyed it for the few hours I played. The biggest shame in this game is a strange one, and it's not going backwards. I'm still upset about that, by the way. The biggest actual shame is that there are no credits. Because there are no credits, I don't know who the composer is. The soundtrack isn't the best, it's not the greatest thing I ever heard, it's not Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, but there are still some jams in there. I did some research and I can only speculate that the composer was Taisuke Araki. Ultimately, it's just an educated guess based on Araki being the only composer who worked on games made by Softnica that was actually employed at the company. Personally, I don't see them reaching out for a composer for such a small game, especially when it's just labeled as a mini-game on their website. They obviously don't care about this game. But I do. Well, that's Konae-chan Dokidoki Penguin Kazoku. It's a lovely game, but there's actually something about this game. Konae specifically. Is that Nana from Ice Climber? Ice Climber from 1985 is not a great game. It's not even a good game. But it's a guilty pleasure of mine. I have put so many damn hours into this game. It's simple, it's fun, even though the jumping is complete ass. I love it. Maybe it's just me seeing someone in a pink parka and thinking, oh my god, Ice Climber! But Nintendo and Softnica were kissing so often that they got to work on a Donkey Kong game. In the 90s! I'm shocked that this wasn't an official follow-up to Ice Climber. I mean, they have wind effects, ice physics, there's snow. It's just like Ice Climber. I mean, birds are the enemy. This is Ice Climber. This is Ice Climber 2. I've been waiting for this for 20,000 years. Missed opportunity. Oh well. Let's get bittersweet. Konae-chan was only seemingly broadcasted twice during Satellaview's life cycle. This game that must have taken many weeks, even maybe a few months to create, was only available to play twice in the span of 1,894 days. From a game preservation standpoint, that's really sad to think about. So many Satellaview games suffer from the same fate due to the nature of the service. I'm really happy there are people out there trying to preserve every game from this era. Archiving is so important. But anyway, Drowning Penguins is not okay. Drowning Pikmin though? Go for it.